I will call to order the October 10th, 2024 meeting of the Santa Barbara Local Agency Formation Commission. Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Commissioner Freeman.
Here.
Commissioner Geyer. Commissioner Hartman.
Here.
Commissioner Kiriakou.
Here.
Commissioner Magana. Commissioner Nelson.
Here.
Commissioner Osborne.
Here.
Commissioner Patino.
Here.
Commissioner Richardson.
Here.
Commissioner Stark.
Here.
Commissioner Williams. Let the record reflect that Commissioner Geyer, Commissioner Magana, and Commissioner Williams are absent, and Commissioner Nelson will be voting today.
Thank you. Now, please join me for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Next item of business is the approval of minutes from the September 5th, 2024 meeting.
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Nelson, second by Patino. Can we take a roll call vote?
Commissioner Hartman.
Aye.
Commissioner Kiriakou.
Aye.
Commissioner Nelson.
Aye.
Commissioner Patino.
Aye.
Commissioner Stark.
Aye.
Chair Freeman.
Aye.
Motion passes unanimously.
Now is the time for members of the public to speak on items that are not on the agenda. Madam Clerk, are there any requests to speak on items not on the agenda?
Chair Freeman and members of the commission, we have no request to speak on public comment.
All right, and that concludes public comment. Moving on to the approval of the consent calendar. Is there any items which commissioners would like to pull? The item is receive and file a report on disbursements for August through September 2024.
I'll move the consent calendar.
Hartman seconds.
Motion by Nelson, second by Hartman. Do we have any public? Any public comment on this?
Chair Freeman and members of the commission, we have no public comment on this item.
Okay. Moving on to a roll call vote.
Commissioner Hartman.
Aye.
Commissioner Kiriakou.
Aye.
Commissioner Nelson.
Aye.
Commissioner Patino.
Aye.
Commissioner Stark.
Aye.
Chair Freeman.
Aye.
Motion passes unanimously.
Next item of business is business item number 1. Will the clerk please read that item into the record?
Chair Freeman and members of the commission, business item number 1 is to receive and file the 2023 audit report by Davis Farr LLP.
Executive Officer to report.
Great. Thank you, Chair, and good afternoon, Commissioners. So this is our first year utilizing the audit firm of Davis Farr under our recently RFP process that we've selected them. And so they've basically concluded that we have a audit that ended well and in accordance with the accounting principles. There was one correction that they noted that had to do with the accounts receivable, where we earned additional revenue that was out past the fiscal year end. And so they made note of that. Other than that, there's not a whole lot of lackluster in this report, but we do happen to have a member from Davis Farr, Shannon Aya, on the Zoom call with us. So they're here if you have any specific questions about that, and she can help answer any questions. So with that, that concludes my report.
Thank you. Are there any questions or comments from the commission?
I have a simple question, if I might. Were there any exceptions whatsoever in the audit report, or is it what I would call is perfectly clean?
Yeah, it was clean outside of that misstatement of the $12,000 that we collected in revenue from our member agencies. post the close of the fiscal year.
Thank you.
Pausing a moment to hear anything from Santa Maria. Sorry, we're in Santa Maria. From Santa Barbara. Hearing nothing. Moving on to public comment.
Chair Freeman and members of the commission, we have no request to speak on this item.
All right. Well, I will accept a motion on this.
I'll move to accept the audit report.
I'll second.
Motion by Stark, second by Patino. Moving on to a roll call vote.
Commissioner Hartman,
Aye.
Commissioner Kiriako,
Aye.
Commissioner Nelson, Commissioner Patino,
Aye.
Commissioner Stark,
Aye.
Chair Freeman.
Aye.
Motion passes unanimously.
All right. Next item is information item number 1. Will the clerk please read that item into the record?
Chair Freeman and members of the commission, information item number 1 is to receive and file a status report on Sustainable Agricultural Lands Conservation Grant Partnership Program.
Okay. Executive Officer to report.
Thank you. So, consistent with our this year's work program, we set out to seek a partnership to explore whether or not we can apply for a SALT grant this year, with kind of a broad scope in mind of what that might entail. So we've held a number of meetings with different partners that might be interested. We've reported back to the commission some of the meetings that we've held, and I think we've narrowed it down to kind of a core group of about a dozen different public agencies, nonprofits, and other organizations that would partner with us in collaborating on a grant. Tentatively, we're looking at roughly 4 areas that this grant could consider, and that has to do with climate resiliency, updating our mapping efforts, extending beyond what the conservation blueprint work did, updating those maps and boundaries and doing some additional analysis work with that. After doing that, some analysis, do some prioritization of at-risk agricultural areas. And lastly is to look at some different policy implications that might come of that, that we all could kind of consider. And given the broad depth of the group that's being interested, each one of these areas would be kind of refined and probably flushed out a little bit more as a particular individual or group of individuals has expertise in that area. They would help refine what that means and what we're really going to try to pursue within this grant. Generally, the grant would be a non-regulatory kind of regional planning document effort that we're going to take that look at different strategies and ways to invest in meeting those 4 goals. Specifically, we still need to develop some actions and some deliverables within what we would identify within the grant. We need to develop a work plan, a budget. All this still needs to kind of get flushed out amongst the group. One of the key components that I would like to be able to bring back to the partnerships is whether or not LAFCO would take on a lead role in this sense. So I'd like to get a sense from the commission if that would be of interest. I can report that back, that, and being the lead role is basically being the main contact point, distributing the grant funds to all the individuals that are participating in this, and monitoring all of that and being the go-between between the grant issuer and who's working on the grant stuff. So that will take some effort, and that's been one of the kind of key points that the group has struggled with to identify. There's only certain entities that do qualify. We are one of them. Land trust is another. County would be another. So there are other opportunities for individuals to step into that role. But as of right now, I think your staff has kind of taken the lead to try to drag this group together and make some sense of what we want to create here. And so I've been happy to sort of lead that effort, and we're at a point now where I really need to understand if the commission would still continue to support that. And if so, there's a preliminary application that needs to get submitted. We'll do a preliminary meeting in November with the state folks. Ultimately, that preliminary applications due in January, at which time we would need to come back for a formal resolution from the commission. You'd have to fully buy in on all of this. And we'd have all that documentation. We'd have the work plan, the budget, and kind of a flushed out grant program that you would be agreeing to and understanding as to how it would work. So with that, I'm happy to turn this over to a discussion for the commission to consider, and then again, maybe draw some conclusions about whether or not it's adequate for us to take on a lead role here.
Okay. Moving on to questions, comments from the commission. I think I'll start with Nelson.
Yes, thank you, Chair Freeman. You answered one of those questions, which was that I had, was if not LAFCO, who? So you said county potentially, the land trust potentially. What other, is there any other agencies that might be looked at? Would I guess maybe SBCAG? Are you looking for a regional entity to do this, or is it just any type of nonprofit or
Anybody with land
quasi-government?
use authority can do it, individual city. We can partner with the RCD. Under some of those scenarios, we need an MOU that we would coordinate with to do some work. So there's a number of different ways to obtain a lead in this, and who's kind of the responsible one. But
And so I guess the other thing is, if whoever takes the lead, is there some administrative overhead in this grant?
yeah, so that's mainly the role that the lead would have.
Okay. So, and I guess the other question would be, is there bandwidth within LAFCO staff to be able to manage something like this?
That's a question that we still need to understand. What's the details in what we're going to seek in this grant? We're going to stick to these four, or is it going to broaden a little bit? How much are the other partners going to put their weight behind the effort? So we'll see how that goes. I suspect that if we become the lead, I will probably ask the commission for maybe a part-time position to be added, mainly in the realm of clerking duties, so that we can take our clerk analyst and give her more assignment in this area so that she can focus on that.
Okay. I'm interested in LAFCO potentially moving forward. I mean, you know, there's representation from, you know, all the different agencies here, which makes it unique. That's why the other one that popped up to me was potentially SBCAG. I think if it was the county, there might be some of our other partners that might be concerned that the county is putting too much of a county spin on it. And there's obviously things that impact our cities and our special districts. And so I would be concerned about the objectivity. The Land Trust has a lot of other big things on their plate right now. So even though they're a great partner and I'm a big fan, I would be concerned about their responsibility. And there's going to be a lot of policy in this eventually that comes out of it, I would think, too. And so I wouldn't want to put them in the crosshairs of all the various tough decisions that might be made. So I'm interested in the LAFCO moving forward, if that's what the will of the other commissioners are.
Stark?
Yes, I actually have two distinct questions. The first one's pretty linear. Second one is as well. Have you identified the specific grant and the specific agency that you're shooting at or you're looking at? Or is the door still open to other grant sources?
No, this is a specific grant. This is going to be the round 10 for the SALT grant.
Round 10?
Round 10
Of what?
of the SALT grant.
SALT
The
grant?
SALT grant, that's the grant we're going to apply for. It's a planning grant that we're going to obtain.
Okay.
The focus of that grant is what needs to be refined.
Thank you. Maybe my second question, and maybe moot in light of the answer to your first question, which is, have you looked at Proposition 4 on this year's state agenda, which is a large climate bond, which funds a whole bunch of stuff, including some programs for climate resilience? And think that's spelled out in something called SB 867. I just want to know, had you looked at that as a possible alternative source of grant funding money?
We have not.
Okay. I don't know if it covers the sort of grant we're interested in.
Yeah, or whether or not we as a LAFCO is eligible for those funds. That would be my,
Okay, but you have identified a target anyway.
So the focus was to identify this particular grant, which we would be eligible for.
Any other questions from the commission? Oh,
Yes. Waving up here.
actually, Richardson. Yes.
No, it's
You were pointing-
Commissioner Osborne.
I do have a
Oh, you were pointing yourself. I think you're. I think you're.
That's okay.
I think you're.
No,
I think you're
that's all
pointing
right.
at him. I'm sorry.
No, we're sharing a microphone.
Okay.
To Director Nelson's point, I do want to bring up that your partnerships lean heavy into county departments and conservation districts and nonprofits. There's no representation in your partnership. I know it says other, but there's no specific representation from cities. And so I think to move this forward, you really do need to expand on that. I know it makes it a slightly larger group, but I think those of us that supported this feel that the cities are still being left out of this discussion and need to have a stronger role as you move forward in applying for it and potentially being partners in that application, because we do have some of the staff that could help out if you were needing it. But I've gotten feedback that this list is very extensive, but it drops the cities out of the discussion and hides us under other stakeholders and supporters, which is, I know why historically that's listed. And we definitely need a little more direct representation as we move forward.
Moving on to Hartman.
Well, first of all, I just wanted to go back and thank Commissioner Stark, because I think he was the person who kind of got us in this direction, figuring, and then Commissioner Nelson, if we figure out where we can develop and then where should we not develop and how do we put things in place to protect those areas over time. And I think you've reached out to a whole new set of partners for LAFCO in terms of legacy works and the land trust, for example. So I'm really excited about that. I'm very eager for LAFCO to play the lead role if Director Prater, or Executive Officer Prater, if you're willing to do it. I think LAFCOs in other parts of the state are doing innovative work, and I think that it gives it a gravitas. I also think that LAFCO does represent special district, city, as well as county, and so it has a breadth already across agencies and across the county as a whole. So as far as the first issue goes, I agree with Commissioner Nelson. I really would like to see LAFCO take the lead and have enough money in the budget, if we get the grant, that we could allocate that to someone to help you do some of the administrative work or do some of the clerical work. As far as, I mean, I think we have cities and counties. I'm not sure. I'm certainly open to a city perspective, but I think that comes from LAFCO. I think this is kind of a working group to write the grant. I think maybe an issue would be before the grant's submitted that there's an opportunity for comment by the LAFCO board members. I'm not sure, that may be cumbersome, but maybe that would at least generate some discussion. And then, you know, how the grant is actually implemented, that will take everyone to be involved in it. I think all our cities, many of our special districts. So those are my comments.
Thank you. Are there any other comments? Or actually, back
Commissioner
Nelson?
Kiriakou.
Yes,
Oh, Kiriakou, let's do you.
Hi, thanks. I think particularly given the priority number 4 of policy determinations is deemed appropriate, I think a potential compromise we might look at is having a recurring agenda item that comes to the LAFCO board where we would have an opportunity to provide comments, give general direction in a public Brown Act space where we can all come together and talk about the different different things that need to be prioritized. I also just happen to think that organically there are going to be emerging issues coming up between the cities and the county and LAFCO the next couple of years that are going to perhaps elevate what some of those at-risk areas are and might help lend themselves towards policy determination. So I appreciate some of the comments that have been made here. I feel confident that as long as LAFCO is actively discussing this, we can provide the direction from each of the three legs of this three-legged stool that is LAFCO to be able to accomplish what we're trying to accomplish.
I'll explicitly ask, is there anyone else in Santa Barbara who is waiting to? Sounds like no. Moving to Nelson.
Yes, thank you, Chair Freeman. I like where this discussion is going, although I want to be sensitive to the cities who have historically felt like they've been left out of this conversation. I think, yes, there's a voice at LAFCO, but then you look at the next three partnerships are all Santa Barbara County agencies, all people that work for myself and my colleagues. And so there's a little bit of disproportionality there that I think is sensitivity. And I just want to acknowledge that and say, if that's the case, it doesn't cost us a lot to put some city representation on there. I know the city managers meet maybe a representative from the City Managers Association. I don't know if that's a formal deal, just so there's that voice out there. Maybe somebody from TTAC, which is a technical advisory committee from our public works departments. I don't know what the right piece is there, but I think just acknowledging that sometimes the cities have felt left out and just having another seat at the table and not just commenting when it comes to us, because when it comes to us, then cities are just 1/4 of the entities that are talking about it, and so then that's diluted out. And there's I don't think it costs us a lot to throw another partner on there, and I think it could get us a lot of goodwill and really bring in a true partnership together. So I would be in favor of trying to find some place for that if we move forward.
Bettina.
Thank you. And thank you, Mr. Nelson and Ms. Osborne. I think it's really important, rather than go ahead and say, whoops, I think we forgot something was overlooked. And that way, as we move ahead, because cities, we are advocating for cities because that's what we're doing here, and they are very important to us. Thank you.
Thank you. I have a slight follow-up question, I think, on something that was mentioned by Hartman, which is in the case that it is deemed that we would need to have more staff support here, such as potentially a part-time clerk, is that something that would be able to be done as part of overhead on this grant?
I think that's going to be up for discussion at our next budget cycle that we would be talking about. Because obviously, I think we want to wait to see that we are awarded the grant to be able to exercise that.
I guess my question is less about whether we will do that and more about whether is that something that the grant actually allows for to happen. Some grants have
the grant. Yeah, the grant does allow a lot of ways in which to spend that funding. It gets anywhere from paying for meals and childcare for special populations to be able to participate in the process. So it's pretty broad in that sense. And while I'm speaking, I think I would concur that city involvement is a core piece to this, and we will reach out again. I have no issue with getting city involvement on the core team. It just happened to be when we were soliciting, it didn't really rise to the level of a level of bandwidth that any of the city staffers wanted to contribute. So they were more on the second cuff of stakeholders. They would chime in, but I'll take another swing at making sure that the cities have an opportunity to provide a core team member to that. And again, the grant, if awarded, is likely a 2 to 3 year grant. And so there'll be plenty of opportunities, I think, to bring back more discussion as we start to develop the grant to keep a reoccurring conversation at the LAFCO side of things.
Thank you. Stark.
Yes. I think the comments are all well taken. I think it might be helpful. It appears that you got to get the grant before you implement the grant. And it would seem to me that the chances of getting the grant are enhanced if there is demonstrating cooperation between the various kinds of entities that are involved in the effort. So if we, it's thought helpful, we could make a motion request our EO to solicit volunteers for an appropriate city representation on the team, so that we can ensure that all the oars are pulling in the same direction. I may have like messed up a rowboat analogy, but you got the idea.
Thank you. Any other comments, questions from the commission? Follow up on things we discussed? Moving on to public comment.
Chair Freeman and members of the commission, we have no request to speak on this item.
Okay, moving back to the commission. I don't know if we've actually given you the kind of feedback you were really looking for here, have we? Oh, okay, great. Okay, well, no motion is needed on this item, so we can now move on. Moving on to information item number 2. Will the clerk please read that item into the record?
Chair Freeman and members of the commission, information item number 2 is to receive and file a report on the 2024 LAFCO Annual Conference in Fish Camp, October 16th to the 18th, 2024.
Thank you. Executive Officer.
Okay, all right. So attached to this report was a schedule that LAFCO put out loosely by the time we had to publish this report. And generally, we have 3 commissioners and 3 staff going to this. And then we added an addendum to the program, which included the actual conference program, who the speakers were, and the time slots to all of that. For those that are attending or those that might have an interest in a topic and can ask one of us that are attending to bring back materials or to brief them on something of interest to them. The one note I will make is there's a correction to the LAFCO 101 on Wednesday morning. It's actually 10 o'clock in the morning, and I think it was posted sometime at 2:30 or something like that. It's really at 10 a.m. Wednesday morning will be LAFCO 101. So there was a later correction to that program that I didn't publish, but I'm here to announce that for you. So if there are any questions about the program or about the conference, happy to answer anything.
Just to verify, I don't know if you're saying that the attachment has the issue, or if you're
The
saying...
addendum is the conference program.
I'm just, the one that, the attachment that I'm looking at does say 10 a.m. for LAFCO 101, so I'm just wondering if the correction was in the other direction or for a different item, or...
That, the
okay.
schedule is correct. The slick color pamphlet that the LAFCO put out that we later posted to the website was incorrect for that time slot.
Okay, thank you. Are there any questions or comments from the commission? Stark.
I'm sort of quizzical as to whether you could give us any insight as to what the intended actions by the LAFCO powers that be are, so we might have some advanced knowledge, or at least the public have some knowledge of it, or do we just find out when we get there? I'm not averse to that.
Well, there's the annual conference meeting that we'll attend
Right.
on.
My question was actually more substantive than
Yeah.
that. They're changing their lobbying policy in some way. Is that right?
Yeah, so I'm going to get at that. That's a scheduled item for the annual business meeting to be held, right?
Okay.
Under that discussion, the LAFCO board held a special meeting in which your executive officer and another commissioner attended, and they took an action to rescind those decisions. So we are back to a ledge committee, like always, performing that work. The contract they had with the lobbyists is still in place. It's going to extend out, I think, until sometime next year. But all of the work that they were going to use and divert the campaign to to do the legislative work has essentially been reverted back to the way it has always been. So that's the decision they made. They'll probably announce that decision at this conference.
So it's an announcement, not a discussion and stuff like that.
The discussion's been had and the board took a vote.
Fine. Thank you. Yeah. And we'll find out what it is.
Anything else from the commission? Any public comment?
Chair Freeman and members of the commission, we have no request to speak on this item.
Okay, no motion here is needed. So moving on to information item number 3, will the clerk please read that item into the record?
Chair Freeman and members of the commission, information item number 3 is to receive and file a report on pending Santa Barbara LAFCO applications.
Executive Officer.
See, we got my light on here. So this is an opportunity to just announce the applications that have been submitted to our office. That doesn't go through a normal announcement period. We've only received 2 essentially to date. I think another one is slated to come in momentarily, so we'll have a third one that'll probably hit our desk as well. These are the applications that we're working on. A simple annexation into Santa Ynez CSD for sewer service in their district. The city of Santa Maria is going to submit an application here for out-of-agency service agreement for the Bonita school site, since they've had a well-documented failure in their wells system, and so that'll be a health and safety extension that we can authorize for them so that they can get water service from the city. And outside of that, if there are any specific questions about these applications, we'll try to answer any of those.
Thank you. Are there any questions or comments from the commission? Nelson.
Yes, thank you, Chair Freeman. You said there's a third application you guys are looking at potentially getting?
There's a third application, I think, about to come in, which is a sphere amendment and annexation into the Goleta Sanitation District.
Okay.
They're on that fringe, kind of into the Hope Ranch area, and so they're trying to. I think they have a failed system as well, and they're excited to move forward.
And then my other question is about the Bonita School out-of-area service agreement. There's been an evolution of that campus. You know, originally that was a campus for a lot of the farm kids that lived out there on the ranches, but you know, most everybody's moved into town now. So it's been absorbed by the urban school district, which has overcrowding. So they're busing 700 kids out to a farm field, essentially to have school every day. And I've had conversations with the school district about talking about eventually, you know, that might not be the best place to have a school. It's along Highway 166, which we know is one of the most dangerous corridors, where school buses idle in the right-of-way. It's really a bad situation out there. Is it possible if we, but there's also a need here. So there's these 2 issues. Is there possible when we do an out-of-area service agreement that it'd be for a period of time? Because, you know, I think that might be something we might want to look at so that there's a signal that this isn't a permanent growth-inducing type of thing, you know, because having a school surrounded by farm fields in every direction isn't necessarily the greatest thing from a good policy and land use perspective. And if it was a permanent contract, it may seem like that's a permanent fixture. And I really would hope that the leadership in the school district in the future might look at trying to find a way to bring that school into the community so the kids can go to a school that's in their neighborhood and not be bused into a industrial facility for their education.
The short answer is the commission does have conditioning authority.
All right, thank you for letting me editorialize in my question. So thank you.
Richardson.
Just a quick question about the Mission Drive to CSD. Is that another sewer attachment in Janet Acres? Is that the second one?
That is not in Janet Acres. That's in the district's kind of proper. It's kind of one of the holes in their surrounded by their existing service area.
It's going to be another connection to that sewer that's along Mission?
Yes.
Okay. it created a traffic problem when they connected that sewer, the previous one, for 3 days, one lane.
Thank you. Anything else from the commission, maybe in Santa Barbara? Hearing nothing, moving on to public comment. Wait, yeah, nothing there. Moving on to public comment.
Chair Freeman and members of the commission, we have no request to speak on this item.
Okay. No motion on this item is needed, so we can move on. The next item is commissioner announcements. Do we have any commissioner announcements or any requests for future agenda items? Stark? Is that? Richardson.
Just a quick comment. Having chaired meetings before, some of the votes on issues that are common, like minutes, I'm wondering just a voice vote would be sufficient to pass the motion rather than adding for a roll call vote. It speeds the process up, speeds the day up. I don't know that you have to use a roll call vote.
Yep.
I think we were conferring there. It's when we have remote participants from the commissioners that are in
Yeah, I
Santa
can
Barbara.
understand
We
that
have to do a
part, yeah.
roll call. If everybody was in the room, we would do
It's just rare. So
we would do an all in favor kind of vote at that point.
The thing on that note, I always was confused by is I was under the impression the law has it that we have to record who says every vote, but we don't actually necessarily have to do a process where we read a name and then have somebody say something, as long as we actually have it unambiguous. But that's that we always, yeah.
I always felt if there was division on the council, that I would ask for a roll call vote, or if it was an important subject that required the public to know who actually voted for a particular item.
Yeah, I think, well, yeah, so I'm also under the impression that under the kind of law that we're under that, and of course we have the law here, that all of our votes, we have to record everyone's individual vote. We can't just say that like, oh, we heard that everyone was seemingly in favor.
You would ask for
but like in a Robertson's Rules of Order with a giant panel of 1,000 people, we might be able to, Right. All right. Moving on to executive officer comments.
Okay, I have 2 comments. Update the commission that SB 1209, which was the indemnification bill, it was signed by the governor, and that will now take effect January 1st. So that gives LAFCO the authority to condition indemnification on projects that are approved. The second is something we already talked about, which is the Cal LAFCO special meeting that they held September 30th to go over the results of their reestablishing their ledge committee structure. They rescinded that action, as I indicated, and that they now plan to take that up at their annual kind of or biannual strategic planning meeting. So they do a strategic planning retreat every so periodically. That date hasn't been set. Those are usually in-person dates. Meetings, and so they plan to take that up and see if they want to take another look at how they can make that process more efficient. So those are my 2 announcements.
Thank you. I think we are now adjourned to Thursday, November 7th, 2024 at 1 p.m. in Santa Barbara.
What was the day?
2024. Is that not right?
No, that's right.
Oh, good. Okay, great. Okay, thank you.
Jeez.